Welcome to the channel Learn with Danish. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. Good evening friends. Today we are back with another video. Today we are going to discuss the poem that's written by a very well-known Turkish writer, Nazim Hikmath. He's also originally called as Nazim Hikmath Ran. And his poem, Advice to Those Who Will Serve Some Time in Prison, is prescribed for the University of Calicut second semester BA English Language and Literature students under the main paper Appreciating Poetry. Nazim Hikmath was a well-known Turkish lyricist, playwright, screenwriter, director, and as well as memoirist. He was called the Romantic Communist. He was described as Romantic Communist also, because he had served under the oppositional Turkish Communist Party for a certain period of his time. Due to his political leniency towards communism, he was arrested continuously during his youth in Turkey. He later on fled to Moscow, and it was in Moscow that he breathed his last. His paternal genealogy is basically Turkish, whereas his maternal genealogy is related to Georgia, Germany, and all those areas. He had served under the Ottoman Empire during the First World War, which was sided with the German ally. When we talk of Nazim Hikmath, we need to know the history or the political history of Turkey in the 20th century. As we all know, in the 16th, 17th and 18th century, Turkey was a country that was under the Ottoman Empire. It was for more than 340 years that the Ottoman Empire had established its rule on Turkey and its nearby territories. It is only after the First World War that the Ottoman Empire was dissolved and the Republic of Turkey was established. It was in the year 1923 that the Turkish Republic was formed with the presidentship of Mustafa Kemal. He was elected as the president of the Republic of Turkey through a secret vote in the year 1923, to be precise in October 1923. Mustafa was actually a westernized Turkish ruler who had westernized reforms in Turkey. So during the Ottoman Empire, we had many religious codes and laws, but after the republic was formed, Mustafa abolished all the religious codes and maintained civil codes. He also unified educational system and made administration in a very secular westernized policy. His model of bringing up the legal system of Turkey was under the Switzerland model. So on the whole, we see that the Turkish Republic was aligned to the European policy, especially the policy that was related to the British and the French allies as such. But on the other hand, we had the emergence of the Turkish Communist Party in the year 1920 by yet another Mustafa Sufi. So this Turkish Communist Party was a kind of oppositional party to Mustafa, and they were not actually inclined to any models that was established by Mustafa Pasha. They had many criticism from different sides of the globe and ultimately was banned soon. Communist ideology was an ideology that was not accepted by the Britishers or the French in general. It was an ideology that was only prevalent in Russia during that time. In the year 1917 to 1920, we had the rule of Vladimir Lenin in Russia, and it was after the October Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution that we know we have the emergence of communist ideology in Turkey under the leadership of Mustafa Sufi. So Nazim Hikmath had held ranks in the party in different occasions, and Nazim Hikmath's ideology with communism led him to oppose the then government and ultimately made him flee to Russia or to Moscow as such. He was introduced to Mustafa Kemal in the year 1920, and Mustafa Kemal, the about to be president of Turkish Republic, had asked him to write poems which could energize the Turks against the frontiers so that they could achieve their republic. So ultimately we see that it was Nazim Hikmath's poetry that served as a great part in creating a kind of revolutionary feeling among the Turks in order to overthrow the allied monarchy system that was prevalent in the northern, eastern and southern frontier of Turkish in particular. So Nazim Hikmath's poetry is basically a revolutionary model poetry. He has served in prison because of this lenience towards the communist ideology, and his prison term was actually questioned by many great artists like Pablo Neruda, Picasso, and also Nazim Hikmath was considered to be a celebrity in prison as such. In this poem also he actually tells the readers of what a prisoner is ought to do. He has undergone the experience of being a prisoner in his actual life, and that experience makes him write this poem that you have got to study. He is actually having a very optimistic point of view with regard to life as a prisoner, and this optimism is clearly seen throughout the poem. Even though there is a pessimistic tone, if you are imprisoned in a prison, there is an optimism in the life or the way that you live your life in prison according to Nazim Hikmath. Let's just get into the poem that we have got to study. Some advices to those who will serve time in prison. That is the poem that we have to discuss. Usually people, when they serve time in prison, they think, you might be reminded of the movie Kireedam in Malayalam, where Mohanlal spends his time in prison and later on gets released, and we see that he is ultimately very pessimistic about his life ahead. He has lost his love and he doesn't have any kind of living opportunities. But that should not be the case. It might be idealistic, but Nazim Hikmath says that this attitude of prisoners, the general pessimistic attitude of prisoners, should be removed. Or in general, when we come up with difficult situations in life, you tend to go in for extreme negative thinking. That extreme negative thinking should be dissolved with positive energy, with the will of living your life to the fullest. That is what one should do. It is extremely a motivational kind of poem that he comes up with. Okay, so let's just get into the topic as such. Some advice to those who will serve time in prison by Nazim Hikmath. If instead of being hanged by the neck, you are thrown inside for not giving up hope in the world, your country and people, if you do 10 or 15 years, apart from the time you have left, you won't say, better I had swung from the end of a rope like a flag. So this is the first starting stanza of the poem, and we see that the poet here is actually talking about prisoners who are spending their term in prison. So instead of getting inside the prison, if you think that that is the end of your life, that is the most unwanted thought that would come onto your mind. So we should have some hope. We should not give up our hope. He comes on with the optimistic statement right from the beginning itself. So you cannot hang yourself, even if it is for 10 years, even if it is for 15 years. After the life that you have spent in prison, you still have 10 more years, you still have 15 more years. You needn't worry. You should not think that is the end of your life. Because at the end, at the ultimatum, you will always realize that it was better than finishing off my life in a rope. That is, finishing off while committing a suicide or death. So he's having an optimistic start to his poem. He's advising his prisoners. He's advising the prisoners. You'll put your foot down and live. So he's asking prisoners to put your foot down and live rather than become pessimistic about life in general. It may not be a pleasure exactly. Pleasure in the sense jail term or prison term is not a very pleasant thing to be experienced. It is not pleasurable though. You cannot have pleasure in jail. But it's your solemn duty to live one more day to spite the enemy. So you have come here for a reason. You have entered prison for a reason. And that reason assumes to be correct to you. It might be not correct for the other people. So every time you spend your day in prison, you should think about the reason you have come here, and you should spite your enemy. Spite in the sense you should treat your enemy to be your enemy as such. That is a kind of comradeship that Nazim Hikmath had in his mind all the time when he was a prisoner. So he is always with his ideology. You should be with your ideology. You know that whatever you have done is not wrong, and the authority has punished you for no reason. Right. Part of you may live alone inside, like a stone at the bottom of a well. So part of you, in the sense, if you divide your personality into two, it is only one part of your personality or one part of your physical body that appears to be tied like a stone inside the well that doesn't come up. Or you might be serving your life imprisonment in jail. But the other half, what about the other half? But the other part must be so caught up in the flurry of the world. So he's talking about the world outside, what one should be. One should have that optimism in his mind, thinking about his countrymen, thinking about his people, thinking about the world outside. That thought would make a prisoner live each day of his life in prison. That you shiver there inside when outside a 40 days distance a leaf moves. So whenever you're shivering inside, whenever you are kind of really pessimistic or really bored inside, you're shivering with your life, you might be having fever, you still have to think of those positive moments where you would be free one day or the other. To wait for letters inside, to sing sad songs, or to lie awake all night staring at the ceiling. So these three lines, what does it indicate? It indicates a general stereotypical image of a prisoner. So what is a prisoner? You can see that movie Changol or Kiridam for that matter. What is the life of Mohanlal in that movie? Or for any movie as such, or any prisoner that you have come across. Very rarely we have prisoners who are really happy. But usually prisoners wait for letters inside. Right, they are waiting for letters. And we we see that sad songs are sung when people are inside prison, and people don't get their sleep in the normal manner when they are in prison. So these are all stereotypical images that you have, but that should not be the case. According to Nazim Hikmath, what does he say? Look at your face from shave to shave. Don't be in a position where you don't shave your face. It should be clean, right? Forget your age. Don't count on days. Don't count on the months or weeks that you spend in prison. Watch out for lice. Now that equates the condition of prison. You might be having very difficult times. You might be having parasite. What is a lice? Lice is a kind of a krimi or a parasite or a pain, right? That you might find. So you might have very, very bad moments at time. Watch out for the lice and watch out for the spring nights. You might have beautiful nights also. Along with sadness comes happiness in equal proportion. And always remember to eat every last piece of bread. So whenever they serve you food, always remember to eat them with full. Right. So he's talking about the optimistic attitude that one should have. Even if you have bad times in prison, you should wait for the nice moments. You should wait for your spring nights. And you should always remember to eat your food, because maintaining health would always be positive in the futuristic term, right? So when you're finishing your term, when you have finished your term in prison, and when you get out, you should be healthy as earlier as itself. So you should not be weak. You should not be weak in physique and mental capabilities. That is what Hikmath is saying. Okay, you should be always strong. You should eat your bread, eat your food. Also, don't forget to laugh heartily. A thing that you don't see in prison. Laugh heartily. Why do you laugh? We laugh because to get a kind of positive energy, right? You get positive energy when you laugh heartily. And who knows, there might be some negative thing. So he's mixing up things here. He's mixing positive with negative. He's talking about lysis. Then the next sentence he talks about the springs. Then here he talks about laughing heartily. And the next sentence over here, the woman you love may stop loving you. Right. There might be difficult times again. So laugh heartily. You should laugh heartily. You should laugh until your stomach aches. But still, your lover might stop loving you. That's not a matter. Don't say it's no big thing. Don't say that it's not a matter. Don't say that it's not big thing. It is a very big thing, because when you come to know that your loved ones have stopped loving you, that you realize that you are good for nothing. Oh, for whom am I living? Like these questions come onto your mind. So I know that Hikmath is saying here, I know that it's a very hard thing to realize that your loved ones, your lover might not love you when you get out of the jail. It is like snapping of a green branch to the man inside. So you're making it really look ugly. To think of roses and gardens inside is bad. So you should not think of roses and gardens. You should not have great hopes about your future. Don't have great hopes. So these are the expectations that you should have. You should realize that once you get out of jail, your loved ones might not love you anymore. So these are all nice things. So don't think of roses and gardens. What to think of? To think of seas and mountains is good. What is the difference between roses and gardens and seas and mountains? Roses and gardens are considered to be domestic terms, whereas seas and mountains are considered to be wild terms, adventurous terms. So think of an adventure. Think of the ambitious life that is there ahead of you while you get out of the jail. Right? Don't think of anything low. Think of higher aspects of your life. Read and write without rest. A hobby that you can come up with when you are in prison. So these are all advices. As the title goes, these are some advices to people who will serve time in prison. And I also advise weaving. Weaving is a nice activity in order to create your concentration level. So you weave, embroidery, right? And making mirrors. Usually we over here in Kerala, we have chapatis, we have many masks made in jail, right? These are all things that you can do in order to earn your life, or in order to make your life better. Or after you get out from jail, you can come up with these skills of weaving or making mirrors, which could provide beneficial from the career perspective of your life. I mean, it's not that you can't pass 10 or 15 years inside and more. You can. So it's not a big deal. He's taking it in a very light manner. It's not a big deal to pass 10 or 15 years. It will go just in a moment. Just with a snap of the finger, it will go. And more you can. If you want to spend your life in prison for more than 25 years, you can do that also. There's no issue with it. If you follow my instruction, if you follow my advice, that is what Hikmath calls upon. As long as the jewel in the left side of your chest doesn't lose its luster. So as long as you have the willpower, left side of the chest is the heart, the will actually that we are talking of, the willpower to live or the willpower to move forward in life. If you have that willpower, if that willpower is not lost or not rusted, you have a high chance of survival. You have a high chance of coming up with a better life after prison. He indicates a very positive kind of message at the end. So you should have that willpower. You should not lose your hope. You should not think that getting into the prison would mark the end of my life. Rather, it should be a new beginning, according to Nazim Hikmath. This, he thinks of spending life in prison in a very positive term. Positive attitude is there in his mind related to spending time in prison. With that, we come to the end of the poem. I hope you have understood the poem in detail. If you have any queries related to the poem, you can just drop in your comments at the comment box. Till then, it's me, Danish, signing off. Learn with Danish. Have a good day.